Hello and welcome to another episode of the Process and Automation podcast with the Automation Guys. So today we thought we will go back on the low-code application development, and when we speak to our customers and our prospects, we all also hear a lot of problems from problems they have had maybe with previous projects, and today we thought we will cover sort of the pitfalls of low-code application development, so you don't have to do the same mistakes again. And I think that's what we want to cover today. Shall we cover what is low-code and why low-code development in general matters, Arno?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, for some of our listeners that haven't heard about low-code, low-code is a discipline of software development whereby you use no coding or minimum coding to create enterprise-grade applications. And what that means is that you can create software up to 10% faster by using a low-code platform and the configuration of the platform that allows you to assemble business applications. So, low-code development is becoming very mainstream. A lot of businesses are utilizing it. And, if you do it right, low-code allows you to deliver better functionality than compared to conventional development at a faster pace, and also you can rely on smaller development teams to deliver these software. And of course, when you collaborate with end users, low-code lends itself to that sort of end user collaboration software development. It's a very powerful methodology to create applications. And what we're seeing out there, Sasha, is that many IT teams out there that is starting to use low code is only really starting to scratch the surface of the potential of it. And we see a lot of pitfalls in some low code project where these low code projects are run with high code approaches. So what we want to cover today is really to touch on how do you get the full power of low code and low code development from your existing IT team, and how do you shape that team to bring it out of that sort of conventional Java and C++ and C# development and bring those methodologies and those ways of development which can be a bit bloated at some stages or some instances, and kind of address some of the common pitfalls, I guess, to really sort of exploit low code better in your organization, and to roll out projects using low code without those pitfalls and encountering those pitfalls.
Yeah, and today, it will be sort of 4 pitfalls, and if you take those things on board, I'm sure your projects will be far more successful than before. So let's jump straight into pitfall number 1. What we see as well, you touched on this, Arno, earlier. So the development teams are maybe too specialized in high code, and very often too big, and so that really, this is what we see was the traditional development teams full of excessive intro dependencies, and effectively with low code you will generally go for an approach where you have a small team with all the skills you need to really go from idea to application. So that kind of idea, and then and these small teams, they stay together sort of across the projects, so they don't have to spend time learning how to collaborate in general. And these small teams, they have a really good set of functionality or skill set, something what we generally need more in the market to do more of these low-code projects. So you have generally people who are the product owners. So that's the role that does not really develop the features, but so comes into the project or into the team from a business perspective. You have roles who are very skilled UX design skills, people who can really build that really user experience and really good user interfaces, interaction design, all that kind of stuff. Technical design and architecture skills. Business analysts really gathering and digging deep into the business requirements and of the user needs, and of course you need this testing and someone who's leading that small team, and typically maybe that will be a Scrum Master. If you're familiar with that Agile methodology, Scrum, a Scrum Master would also be part of that role. And with this small, powerful unit, you can really get everything done. You don't have to go into another team and ask for help. You can really, as that unit, you can, really from idea to deployment, go live, you can get it done.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point. I think, what you're talking about is this sort of people that's interchangeable with inside the roles. So, you touch on the fact that you've got a product owner, and that's the person that obviously need to transform something on behalf of the business. And again, what we see in a sort of a streamlined, optimized low-code team is that the product owner won't necessarily get involved in any of the technical elements of the project at all. It's good for project or product owners to understand the capabilities of what low-code can offer, so they can articulate that to the business, including the benefits of it, how quickly it is to roll an application out. But of course, like you've touched on those other disciplines, a good UX designer, a technical designer, a person that's in charge of architecture, a business analyst that looks after the requirements and tease that out from sort of the end users, a test function, and then obviously a team lead or a Scrum Master. So what we're saying is that we want to design our low-code team so they embrace collaboration, and they should also be multi-discipline. So a good UX designer should also be somebody that can develop some low-code elements of a system, for example. Or somebody that does testing should also be able to collaborate with the end user on a requirements point. And if you create this sort of interchangeable roles within inside the team, you kind of minimize dependencies, specialized dependencies between people, and you create a truly sort of agile and nimble makeup of the team, so that people can do some of the different disciplines, including end user engagement, being able to talk to end user. And like you mentioned, if you compare this to traditional high code development, where there's a dependency on a database person to go and create a database, well, you don't have it in this instance, because obviously everybody in that team knows how to configure a low code data storage area in the system. So it just speeds that part of the process up.
Yeah, and some companies or some people might say, okay, all these skills, wow, do I need a person each for all these skills? Then suddenly I have a team again of like 6-7 people. This is already quite large in my thinking. So this is what we hear sometimes. So no, you can to kick off. Sometimes people can wear different hats. So
Yes.
these skills need to be available. It doesn't need to be that they necessarily sit
the same person.
Could sit with the same person. So that's very important as well. So you don't need to have a team of 7 people to start off with. As long as these skills are available, you can get going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a product owner in a very small low-code project, it could be a version 1 of a project, could actually be the lead end user stakeholder. That person could functionally be responsible for what needs to be achieved to drive efficiency or to create automation. But you could have one person fulfilling the UX design, the technical design, the business analysis, talking about requirements, the testing, and then obviously the rollout of the application, and Scrum master duties like having a stand-up with the product owner every morning to say, or periodically to say, I've implemented this feature now. Can you have a look at it? Can you provide feedback? Of course, if the project is larger, then you would have multiple people fulfilling these particular roles. But I think the key here is that it's truly cross-functional. What we expect from low-code developers or members of the low-code development team, and they can act in all of those different sort of disciplines. So it's sort of a generalized specialist, if you want to call it that. And again, they are cross-functional. They've got good skills to collaborate. They can understand requirements translation into a solution idea, for example. They can articulate that. So again, I think if the team is too big and too specialized, that's generally what we would consider to be a pitfall we would like to avoid.
Absolutely. So let's jump into the second pitfall. So you're not digging deep enough into the problem. So when you think about traditional software development, it really relies on business analysts who sort of the connection, the translator between the business users and the technology teams. And so usually these two sides are very siloed from each other. So we talked about these skills. If it's not necessarily siloed, then it works much better. So so usually when they are siloed, they're experiencing problems of being separated, and developers attempting to really go really crazy into the problems, and not really good with communication. And so instead of programmers with a decade of Java experience, look for developers who are more really interested in solving problems than writing code. And this is what low code is all about. So it's not about writing lots of code. So they may have one of those two technical specialties as well as sort of the general knowledge of software development and the business domain. So that's a really, really good combination. And as you find the right people, you should also foster a culture of asking open-ending questions, and otherwise people say yes, no, that's really not really getting you anywhere. So never take a requirement sort of at face value. So you always should ask why. So in some cases, you should dig not just one level of why. You should dig deeper and have maybe 3 or 4 times of why. Very similar, like what the kids are asking, isn't it? When they're growing up, they're asking why, and then you have to explain, and then why, and so on. So, but then you really dig deep, and you get the full understanding. And so all this interviewing with why and asking open-ended questions will happen usually at this project initiation, of course, with those collaborative sessions, was everyone included, you will really find out what's the goal of the application, and so it's super important to dig deep. Otherwise, you will at some point go live, and it's just missing all the expectations someone had for the project.
Yeah.
So to sort of really summarize this, you should really have these five areas. So what do you want to achieve with the application? Which end users and stakeholders will benefit? And what is the problem or the need the application must address? So what are the current pain points, bottlenecks, and all the other desired benefits of that application? And what must-have features and functions should the application have? And then you come up with your why questions. Why are these features and functions sort of must-have? And and at some point, you're quite close on what is really needed, and what are the measurable business goals for that in order of priority, etc. So so these are really, really important areas to look at, and if you do not want to have a disappointment at the end, please avoid that pitfall.
Yeah, exactly. So the third pitfall that I want to touch on is just to do with feedback, general feedback when you develop an application. And, I would say that generally, people will say feedback is very slow, it's very scarce, and it can sometimes be distorted. And, with LowCode, we can remove some of those obstacles that slow projects down, when you look at high code projects, for example. And, with these traditional development practices, the feedback loops are really a sort of almost like a ferry between two places, where business users on the one side and developers building the applications is on the other side. And you constantly have to ferry the information back and forth very slowly, probably sometimes via email or long meetings. So it's a very high latency process, and there is a risk that there's distortion. When information gets, or any feedback is ferried between the sort of the two parties, the business side and the application developers. So, a solution for this, to avoid this pitfall, emerges when you can bring the business users and developers very close together to create these applications. And like you said, Sasha, collaboratively, where there's open discussions on the next feature that's been worked on, how it will work. Perhaps it could involve a sort of a visual wireframe, how that particular feature will be configured in LowCode, and it could be discussion around that. So LowCode really bridges that gap that we require to sort of ferry the feedback between business users and on the one side and application developers on the other side. Because of course, what we can do with LowCode is quickly create something, showcase it, and say, is this what you mean by a reconciliation screen, for example? And the business users can say, yeah, we like that, but can it also have this, and this? So it's very easy to communicate that and build that bridge, almost that functional bridge, so that the requirements and the solution can flow freely. And again, it makes collaboration very very easy, and it encourages very clear and frequent input from all of the stakeholders involved, which also, by the way, help you to test some certain assumptions, perhaps that the developers has made, and and it goes a long way to actually finding the right solution, because it is something that you can sort of experiment with. And again, if you have this mindset of increased collaboration and sort of iterative development, you get very early buy-in from stakeholders, especially end users, because they can see the system or the proposed solution that you're going to provide in the system very early on. So with conventional development, everything happens in the silo, and the value comes out at the end of the project. So with low code, we could sort of show the users the application, and they can validate it and sort of influence how it takes shape before their eyes. And like I said earlier, you could use prototypes and in progress build to give the user something concrete to react to, and to validate the design, and also to make sure that the development team has got a very clear understanding of what's needed. And so again, I think the message is, instead of having this the slow ferrying of feedback between the business and the development team, low-code kind of bridges that gap. And we see that daily. We see that daily, where we are very comfortable having a developer interacting with the end user, discussing the design of a component. Pre-low code, that would have been unheard of, because that developer would have received a sort of functional brief somewhere. They would have had some idea of what's required. They would have no sort of direct input or direct feedback as they construct a feature or build a feature from the end user. So again, coming back to pitfall number 3, let's ensure that feedback is quick, it's frequent, and of course it's not distorted. It's a single, to the point. This is how it's going to work. This is a proof of concept we've created, or mock-up. Are you guys happy with this? Kind of get the results you need.
Yeah, we going to an extreme actually next week on those kind of things with the feedback. We get everyone, so 12 people in one room. So it's sort of the sort of close before go live, but then we're really in one room, sort of focused, going through it, high intensity, sort of 1 week in one room. Just pizza goes in to all the stakeholders, all the developers, the UX guys, really everyone of that team, and the end users sitting there. We're doing high intensity testing, feedback testing, smaller changes, last tweaks. So that's a bit of the extreme side, but that is so helpful because you're closing the last glitches within a couple of days together, and get sort of while you're doing this in this week, the really, really deep commitment and confirmation from the business that this is really sort of the product that we want to go live with. It doesn't mean it's set in stone anyway, because we are agile and the next iteration is coming up anyway. But it is really, really helpful. I'm looking forward to this one. But yeah, it's just pre-low code and pre-agile. That was just a 200-page document, the Waterfall Approach, and you just had to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we as recently as last week had a similar, I guess, a similar sort of session prior to go live, and it was a day before go live, and we discovered that a particular journey required a piece of information which the end user, wouldn't be able to provide. So we could almost, as part of that acceptance, real time sort of pivot away and create a solution using a lot of smart people in the room, but to say, well, we can actually circumvent that problem by changing a few things on how the application work. And it was actually in the kind of acceptance meeting where that was briefly discussed. We had consensus from everybody that solution would work. And the low-code developer just went and he sort of just implemented there and then, and on the fly. Now, I know that's an extreme case, but it just shows you the hyper agility that it provides you where people have got confidence in the fact that the ability to change and pivot is there, as long as the solution is clear and people understand what it is, it can be done. And that ensured that those project deadlines, which was really critical because it was to do with patient care, that was met, and we could go live that afternoon. And a lot of the sort of the project stakeholders just said they've never experienced something like that before, because that would have been such a big blocker for them. Whereas with this, it is just another thing that LowCode offers you, is that ability to fix problems very quickly and sweep them away and or move them out the way and move forward. So very, very good story. Similar to what you say with your sort of intense sessions as well. And it's just that last mile of a project that you could still have changes to make a big impact towards the end of the project. And obviously this is a great enabler for that.
I think that's very, very important, these feedback loops, and that's also one of the next sort of our next pitfall. Traditionally, success was only sort of measured at go live. So that the spec was written and then at go live, people looked at it and say, okay, that's great or not great. Sure, there was user testing and maybe that was all fine because test cases were derived from sort of the spec. So functionally, yes, it's maybe the right product and you go live, but somehow users don't get it at the end, isn't it? So this is why it's very important that after the initial discussions and going deep on the requirements in the so-called sprint zero, after that you should continue focusing on your end users throughout the whole development life cycle. So you just mentioned, Arno, you mentioned that one shortly before go live, but we will definitely have these sessions where we speak with end users throughout the whole development. Even maybe it's an 8-week development cycle. So we have every 2 weeks at least, sort of a catch up and a review of what's going on, and invite them into the design process at every feature, new function, and give input and ask questions. So if that is the situation for everyone involved, it is very enjoyable. They can see the product building. They can feel they're building the product together with the developers. They can immediately identify big problems which come up. Maybe a feature and function initially was a really good thought through function or feature, but then as soon as you sort of grab it and start using it, you think, it doesn't work, so we have to go back to the drawing board. So if you have that constant cycle during development, maybe give them sort of the keys to a demo system and they can play around with it. So that's this is where you actually where you will be successful at the end, or these things will make the success at the end by including them during that development cycle. And crowdsource feedback throughout the company, and I think that's key. So if you don't do that and wait just for development team comes back after 8 weeks to go live with something, then there's always something which is not as someone thought in the beginning.
And I'm a firm believer of sprint zero design. That's the place where you kind of build a very deep understanding of your end users' needs and the pain points, and generally that's a very good foundation to build a system. But I think that having end users part of that journey gives them ownership of what you're building. And I think the successes that comes out of those LowCode projects is attributed to the sort of the end users and their inputs. And I think that, it gives them satisfaction and opportunity to shine, because they could really look at something that's been produced and see the features and their suggestions and all of the good ideas that they've contributed towards built into the system. It's very hard to design a system from day one that's got all of these great feedbacks and accounts for all of the sort of feedback that users provide as you create a system. It's very hard to sort of look into the future and understand what that would look like and what that feedback will be. So if you build the system with those people part of it, and you could, like you say, crowdsource the feedback and the ideas from them, bake it into the system, that coupled with good initial sprint zero design, that's when you truly get to really, really special outputs, where kind of IT provides the opportunity then almost for end users to shine and take credit. And I think that's worth a lot, especially if people look at it and they use it, they feel like they were part of that success story. They shaped it. And, I guess the end goal is for the application to become as much theirs as the application team, and they can kind of celebrate the success together. So very, very important. Like you said, common pitfall: success is only measured at go live, but it should be from day one, where we sort of create those early releases, involve the users, like you said, give them the keys so they could run internal demos for a broader user group, and give them a sense of ownership.
Yeah, and Sprint Zero, it's absolutely important. But it is always a moving target. After the Sprint Zero has been defined in reality.
Well, I would say that if I look back at projects where users are involved from the start, it would be very hard to create a project backlog with all of the ideas and all of the nice things that they would like, that makes their life easy in the application. So when you look at the end product or the end result, it is sometimes so drastically different to how you imagined it to look, when you look from a starting point. So I think that's important, because the majority of the backlog that we see, and when I say backlog, I mean feature requests and how people want to shape the low-code application, that happens throughout the life cycle of the project. It's not something that happens up front. Everybody sits in a room for 5 days and we decide, this is our ultimate list of features we want to see in the application. So very powerful methodology, very powerful sort of way of doing things. And, like I say, it still gives you an opportunity at the 11th hour to make things better and still apply changes or implement ideas to make the end result even better.
Yeah, great. So I hope these 4 pitfalls, effectively adopting a few Agile best practices, help you to transform what you're doing at the moment and transform how you develop applications going forward. So it's all actually how to get even more out of low-code. Low-code itself is something we're really passionate about and talking about a lot here in the podcast and on Clubhouse. With those best practices and to avoid these pitfalls, you can optimize that even further. And as a big outcome, when you apply these best practices, you will streamline development with tight and agile teams. You will really define define the right problems and really get a deep understanding of your users, and make it as easy as possible to collaborate with business users. And it will help you to sort of ensure successful applications that are really adopted and loved. That's really the key thing. Otherwise, your return of investment is it's not there. And this is what we usually talk in the beginning of those projects with business people and stakeholders. What is the return of investment? And to actually make that happen, you need to have these applications going live and being used, and then really extend the use of low-code within the whole organization.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it doesn't matter if you're just getting started with low-code and you're new with it, or low-code, you're already on the journey and you're in a process of scaling it across your organization. If you adopt these sort of few best practices and avoid some of the pitfalls, you can truly transform long delivery timescales and sort of just delivering okay applications into very rapid development outcomes that delivers outstanding results. So I think you want to be in that place where the results are driven by the input from all of the stakeholders involved. Do so by means of collaborating with the business users, and ensure that the applications feel great, they work, and they solve the problems, and continue to build them. Continue to evolve it into something better. Don't feel pressured or pressurized to implement something too big. I think understand what would be a meaningful initial build, what would make a difference, and then really just build on top of that. Get wider feedback, bring more features in, and I think once you've got that culture within inside a business, you set yourself up for some really good opportunities to deploy these applications that makes a big difference to people's lives.
Yeah, and so it's applications maybe also in a wider sense, isn't it? So we would speak as well about not just low-code apps. Low-code could also be low-code robotic process automation. It could be low-code chatbots.
Absolutely.
Low-code, so everything low-code these days, and everything what we talk here on this podcast, intelligent automation, everything is really around low code and as well no code, most of it really, and all that best practices we talked about today applies there as well, not just for low code apps. And then if you're interested to hear more about low code and other areas of intelligent automation, listen to our other episodes. We have done a couple on all these important pillars already. So it would be great if you can just listen to them as well, and they will be very helpful. Lots of tips already, and and I guess if you like to get started with low code or like to have more information on low code, Arno, everyone is invited to get in touch with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to all our loyal listeners, everybody that listens to the podcast. Thanks for all the suggestions. We've had a tremendous sort of following in August, which is very encouraging to see. So we appreciate everybody that tunes into the podcast. We are looking forward to cover more topics, of course. So keep the suggestions coming in. If there's anything you wish to discuss with either Sasha or myself, you want to get started with a low-code project, you want to get started with an automation project, you don't know where to start, or perhaps you might have an existing project that's in flight and you want to hear more as to different approaches and use some of our experience to shape the project, please feel free to get in touch with us, either Sasha or myself, via the automationguys.net website link. And, we're more than happy to continue the conversation with yourselves and, and to help people out there to get to their automation success goals that they might have for this year and beyond as well.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for listening, and let's automate it. Unfortunately, that's it again with this episode of the Process and Automation podcast. If you liked this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any upcoming episode. We hope you will tune in next time, and until then, let's automate it.